What's good, everybody? My name is Alckemy. I'm finally home, back in my own studio space. It doesn't look like much, but the equipment is nice anyways. Today we're going to actually be taking a look at Saturn II. And the reason why I want to talk about Saturn II specifically is because it can do some really awesome shaping with drums that I didn't even know about until I was actually watching the video that Dan Worrell posted on the FabFilter channel, respectively. So I have been working on another kind of like masterclass series that's very short, but it's how to make kicks and snares out of virtually anything. This is something I've been practicing for a really long time. I haven't really refined it until I've been doing lessons with Cage, and I've got my process about how I do it and how I approach it on the masterclasses for ARCANUM members now. So I know that that's not a whole lot of useful information, but what is going to be useful is giving you a glimpse into doing something very simple, which is taking something that kind of sounds like a kick, kind of like this, and just doing even two effects to this and changing it into something like that. And this is what we mostly owe to for Saturn and Pro Q3, I guess. So one thing that I like to do with Pro Q3 is there's this trick that you can do on snares that I do this with as well, to where you can use the dynamic EQ, and what it will do is it'll automatically adjust the attack and resonance, or release rather, of whatever frequency you boost. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of control, but what you can do is it works pretty well. So what I'm doing on this is boosting the fundamental here, area-ish. And then the other thing, which is the magic of this, even if I were to turn this off, is using Saturn II as a distortion transient shaper type thing, I guess, if you will. There's a couple of different ways to do this, but what's most important is that you can actually use a transient shaper via this little purple thing here to adjust either the level or the drive of this. So what I typically like to do is to adjust the drive first and then change the level, and the reason why is because this has gain compensation on it. So the more that you actually adjust the drive, it's going to actually turn it down. So if you boost this up and you get the right amount of distortion, and then you actually just boost the low end like that very quickly, then what it's going to happen is going to end up giving you a really nice thump. Now you can't overdo it, but what's really cool about this as well is that you can actually set this to tell it what band you want this to focus on. So if I'm trying to quote-unquote transient shape just the low end of this, which also means that this is a multi-band transient shaper, which is so sick. And also you can tell it where to go, right? So with this on band 1, I'm going to make sure that it's only listening to this, and that's what's actually going to trigger this. So now, whenever we boost that, we can do that to here, and the modulation is super easy. You just drag it over to this and then adjust it accordingly to taste. Now the other thing is that you can actually send this to something different, so you can use like band 2 if you wanted to. Now, the reality of this is that it's not going to make a big difference, but if you're actually trying to use this on a specific drum bus or something, say like a drum break or whatever, then this could provide to be pretty useful, especially if you're trying to, give your low end a little bit of oomph as a whole. So actually, I think that I can probably show you this very quickly, but let's go ahead and go to a break. So we'll find something here. So let's go ahead and just set this to raw, and we'll put this on here. Sorry, let's move this to a new track to where there's nothing on here. Let's grab Saturn II now. So what's really nice about this is that we can actually isolate that low end here. And what we need to do is go to a new envelope follower, and we need to go down to this guy and change this into transient mode, and really just pull back off the attack and release off of this, because we want it to be very fast as possible. And now on this level, we can actually boost this and change the amount of how much we want to boost this to. So now let's go ahead and just listen to what this is without it. Like, how amazing does that sound just from boosting that? So I wanted to kind of just relay a new use from Saturn II that I've been ignoring for a long time, but that just sounds way better. So if we were to even just send that through some clipping, and you can do this with different stuff as well, right? So I didn't even mean to do that because Saturn II cannot clip. Saturn, saturator, newfangled saturate. What if we were to try to make another band here and isolate just the snare? So I can essentially just make a new one here and make sure that this one is highlighted correctly and push this on here. Do the same thing to where we're just focusing on band 2 and go to the transient now, and let's pull this back and pull this here, and let's see what that sounds like. Maybe reduce this a bit too. So are you guys hearing what I'm hearing? We can also kind of treat this like an OTT as well, because it's not necessarily going to do upwards compression or expansion of the sort, even though you do have some dynamics control in here. But honestly, if you were to just apply a little bit of drive to this, so this is a little bit here, but let's go ahead and solo this. And just give this a little bit more. Now you can see here, and this is why I love FabFilter, that the kick and snare are obviously like peaking up really high. So what we can do is we can actually boost this just a bit to kind of even this out. All right, now obviously this guy right here is a perpetrator of being a little bit too harsh, but for the most part, for one, we can find a sweet spot, and I think I'm just gonna focus on. I think that this is actually my break, I want to say. So hold on, that may have been my mistake on just making this break in the first place. Just from the way that it sounds. But assuming that, you know, let's say we just turn this down and affect that anyways, because that sounds a little bit out of place compared to the rest of the break as well. So that's what that sounds like versus... I don't know, man. That sounds really good to me, at least as a means of processing drums. So if you already have Saturn 2, then you might have already seen this trick from Dan Worrell. But for me personally, I think that this is a great tool to... It's not just transient shaping. It's like distortion and transient shaping in one, and then also with a little bit of like compression and whatnot. But I guess if we wanted to wrap this puppy up and you really wanted to make this big, you can always add like some parallel compression to this. And so we can just kind of do the big three, which is distortion, compression, and clipping. At least that's what I would say. Maybe EQ would also be another thing, but I'm not too worried about that right now. But if we were to just back off of this ever so slightly and push the makeup up, turn the P clip on, we're gonna go too far. And then just pull back on the mix. Then turn everything off. Let's A/B this. Big difference. Big difference. So with that, I know that I showed you a bunch of drum fattening tips and stuff, but Saturn 2 is really the highlight of this show because of all the other things that I've shown. And if you want to see how I make drums from scratch, or see how I like to do processing in depth, or take anything and turn it into a specific drum or whatever, then check out the masterclasses that I have. And if you like presets, I've got a ton of them, sample packs, all that stuff on my website, or you can book a lesson with me if you want to go over something in detail. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hope that you enjoyed that. I'll see you later.